Hi, I'm Ali Words, and this is Last Unrifled Yaw. Being an experimental musician and video artist myself, the original intent of this podcast was to record conversations with other video artists. There isn't much audio content bringing together people working together in this medium. The first few episodes will be conversations between me and various video artists. As the show goes on, we will expand the range of guests to include other topics of interest such as experimental music, avant-garde literature, performance art, and the occult. If you or someone you know would like to be on Last Unrifled Yaw, please get in touch. All right, we are recording now.
Oh, cool.
All right, everyone, this is the first episode of Last Unrifled Yaw, a podcast where we talk with people that are making crazy things. Our guest today is Sam Waller. Sam, how would you describe what you do?
Uh, I always have a hard time defining myself in like a single adjective. So I always use different ones when I'm describing myself too. I'll say like abstract, experimental, like visual, multimedia, and I feel like those are the best three words for it. Or like abstract, experimental, multimedia. I just like, no real like I don't like I'm not the kind of person to say like I'm gonna draw this today. It just kind of happens.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe you could describe something that you've done that exemplifies those characteristics so that our audience who maybe has never heard of you or seen anything you've done has an idea what to visualize while we're talking.
Yeah, so I make a lot. I make like paintings, videos, and my process going into it usually is because one of my main like thesis or for when I create is having an expectation for your outcome is giving you this pressure that doesn't need to be there, and creating without pressure like just brings forth art that's more interesting in my opinion because it captures a moment rather than capturing an idea. I mean, it does both obviously, but like I feel like it's more ethereal and more spiritual in that way. And I I'd like to think of my stuff as like straight frame or stream of conscious. Like what you're seeing is an imprint of the visions when I close my eyes. And I think I've always been so like interested in just the stuff I see in my own head, and I've always wanted to express it to people, but I feel like words don't capture it. So when I started discovering, visual medium or visual art as a medium, it felt like I was letting my feelings flow.
Yeah, that's really cool. I definitely empathize with what you're saying about not having a plan at the start for like your end goal so that you can just let whatever you want well up within you. But then I also think it's interesting that you can do that for a while and then partway through the process start realizing where it's heading and then kind of direct it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've seen you in your video rat shit. I feel like maybe that's what was going on. I don't
Yeah.
know how directed that is, but it sort of builds up a plot.
Yeah, you actually hit the nail on the head with that one. The idea was to capture my creative process in video form. Like I wanted to make like because I have friends who make, and I've seen videos on like TikTok and YouTube of like just ASMR painting videos and like people showing the process of how they make their art. And I thought like the way I make my art is so messy and disgusting and like and so like abstract that there's no real way to just like capturing the way I actually do it doesn't capture the real feeling that's coming out of me. And I felt like making rat shit was I actually co-wrote that with a friend. I had a friend come over who I'd never he was he's made videos for a while, but we've never like made videos together, and I was just like, let's make something. And he was also interested in my process, and we just talked about, he helped me like vocalize my process and how we can capture it in that, like give it a plot, because my stuff is so short form. I'm not good with beginning, middle, and end because I don't think it through beforehand. I just let it happen. So it's just one moment. But having him there really gave me a structure that I think came out to something that I'm kind of proud of. I was thinking about submitting it to some festivals, but I haven't. I want to refine it, but at the same time, I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, you definitely should. Whether or not you're going to refine it, I guess there might be an entry fee associated, but
So
you know, always great to get things like that out there. I really enjoyed watching that one. Um, what made
thanks.
you want to approach art like this? You sort of touched on it a little bit, wanting to express your interior experience, but why do you think that's important to you?
Because I went to art school. Like I went to DePaul for video producing and like TV and film, but I took art classes along the way, and art classes in high school too. And I feel like they only teach you method, like literal physical method of like how paint interacts, and I never really was taught like how to approach something, like if I wanted to paint a picture of like a dog on a tree, wouldn't know how to go about that and make it look like photorealistic. I would just be, I just let it come out of my head. I don't know if that makes any sense. I don't even know where I'm going with that anymore, but
That's cool. It gives more background and context. Um, so, could you describe a little bit more of your work process and then maybe how psychology and interior experience plays into your work process?
yeah. I think art is really fun and therapeutic. Like whenever I'm making art, I usually is art when I'm making art is one of the few times in my life when I'm actually focused on something. Like I have a hard time, just like keeping my mind in one place, but when I'm making art, I feel like I'm there, and I can just be there and let it all happen, and I'm not distracted. And like usually when I go into a painting, it's not like, oh, I can't wait to post this on Instagram, or I can't wait to, like see the finished project. It's just, I'll literally just be drawing lines because it feels good. Like moving my arm, the motor function of just like letting, I don't know, it's just something like spiritual, I guess.
Yeah, I had a period of time when I was still in college where the main focus of my art practice was actually automatic drawing. Are you familiar with automatic drawing? Like the Surrealist Method? Oh, okay.
No,
I'm sure
no.
lots of the audience isn't, but I think you would love it. Um, the Surrealist Research Institute, when they were founded, their goal was to figure out ways to externalize the subconscious mind. They originally focused on writing. Like automatic writing is where you'd enter a trance state and you would let whatever words or whatever flow from hopefully your subconscious mind out through your pen and onto the page. And then eventually it started to expand to surrealism and the visual arts. And the way automatic drawing works is you enter a trance state of some sort, and then you just let your hand move the way it wants to move without thinking about what you're doing or where it's going. And then you end up with something. Andre Masson has some very interesting automatic drawings done in ink. But the way I would approach them was sort of like a divinatory practice. Again, trying to contact the subconscious mind, where like I'd let my hand flow and you get all sorts of lines, but then you'd start noticing patterns, things that look like things, sort of like when you're looking into the clouds and you start seeing shapes. And I would start emphasizing those, but without trying to force the image to be any one thing. And I'd keep rotating the page to try to keep resetting my pattern processing capabilities. And then at the end, you end up with all of these not intended juxtapositions of objects or places or scenes or shapes. And you can interpret it in a way. It's almost like the opposite of the Rorschach test. Maybe I said that wrong, but you know, like the ink blot test where you like look in and you see stuff.
Hmm.
It's like that, but you're the one
Yeah.
making the ink blot.
Yeah, I think that exemplifies what I do pretty well. Like I usually just start with shapes. Like I'll start with a couple shapes and I'll be like, "Oh, that kind of looks like a building." And then suddenly the entire painting is a skyline. You know, it's really just I let it like I and sometimes I'll be halfway through a painting and I'll do something that I think looks really cool, but it's totally off topic. And then I'll be like, oh, I guess I'll just change the rest of the painting to make that part the center. And yeah, I think, yeah, just like that fluidity in being able to just go from shape to something that's more concrete and just building up layer upon layer is yeah that's what I do that a lot. I do that in editing too. Whenever I make the like super a lot of my video editing is just layering video with different blend modes, like the super trippy like different colors and shit.
Yeah. So like for people that are
I
listening, if anyone's used Photoshop, like a lot of those same layers like overlay or difference exclusion. I like using difference and exclusion a lot. When you all are watching this
mm,
video, just to tie it in what he was just saying, the way the textures were made is by stacking a bunch of the same blending layers he's talking about, like difference and exclusion and subtraction. It adds or subtracts or multiplies the different layers of color so that you get crazy stuff going on.
mm-hmm. And that's another like form of the like experimental, I guess what you said, automatic process where like I won't really think about how it's gonna look in the editing software. I'll just let it happen and then I'll bring it in, and if it looks cool, it looks cool. You know?
I gotcha. On that same topic, um, what tools are you using inside of whatever software you're using? Are you just using the different blending layers, or what's your approach to that?
I use it depends on what video, but usually like I like my I really like noisy video, like a lot. I like visual noise, and I think the more just stacking effects and different um, blend. Like I like to experiment with how different. Like I use Premiere primarily, and Premiere has a lot of cool like distortion effects, and I use a lot of warps. Like when lines overlap, when you have a bunch of lines coming at each other and they're not parallel, so they kind of create this effect. Like when you take a picture of a screen with your phone and the pixels like create that kind of crazy like layered trippy like mushrooms visual almost. Like when you stack different layers and then just shift them like 2 inches to the left. I do that a lot. But I just like anything. I like experimenting. Like I go into anything with almost no clue of how it's going to look in the end, and a lot of it stems from like a single class I took on experimental art that just the teacher was really inspiring about like just how to
How did the teacher inspire you?
she um had a really good like repertoire of experimental artists, video artists to show us, and just the way she talked about it, and like the way she like just hearing about like other experimental artists processes is fascinating because they're all so wildly different. Like some people, I heard one of my favorite experimental artists is a guy who made this video called, I think it's Moth Light, where he taped like body parts of moths over film and ran it through a projector. And it was like, that's my movie.
Definitely send me a
And
link to that if you can. You can send it after the show. It's fine. I'll put a note down.
Okay,
It's
sorry.
all right. So when you're experimenting with different layers in a video, when do you decide to that you've chosen the right effects or something for that layer? Like what are you trying to have happen as you're going?
Yeah, that's something that like I ask myself a lot, because a lot of it is I'll put it all together. I'll put a video together, and each clip I'll put a different effect on it, and then I'll rewatch it in full, and I might just export it and watch it as it exported, and I'll have a notepad with me that, like, if a clip makes me feel something, like if the way I really just go by, I just keep like trial and error, like my personal taste. Like I'll just say that looks cool, that doesn't. Sometimes I'll bring my girlfriend in. I'll be like, does that look? Like, can you see what's happening? Like it's really just I throw stuff at the wall, and I don't really have a, other than my own personal gauge of just like, I think that looks cool, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I don't have. I also I really like going opposite of the status quo. I like that my stuff doesn't look anything like other people's. I mean, sure, there's other people you can say my stuff looks like, but like in terms of popular art, it's just so different. And I think, like, if I like taking inspiration from other creators, but not in a way of like just straight ripping, because I don't know, like I'll see something and be like, oh, that kind of reminds me of the way I do that. Maybe I'll try it a little more like they do it. And but I feel like whenever I have friends who I've been making videos with for a long time, and they all tell me like they've seen my voice they're like my visual voice come out. And I do feel like it is a lot of just like personal taste. I don't even know what it is. Like I just like this noisiness and just loud loud color.
Yeah, I like that too. One of the things I'm looking for when I'm making I call them video textures because I apply them to other things, is in general my goal is to have as many different kinds of things visible at once as possible. So like, just to take an example, let's say that you had like one video that like scrolls over maybe some clouds or something, right? You could just layer that cloud video over top of itself a bunch of times at like 25% 25% opacity, so you can see through each layer a little bit, but by the end of it you're not going to see the bottom at all, right? What we've been talking about, using blending layers, that helps you see more of what's going on, because instead of seeing through the layer, you're seeing how it interacts with what's underneath of it. For the texture that you're going to see when you're watching the video for this podcast, it does that with the blending layers. And also the opacity is not 100% for each layer. But I also keyed out some of the colors on the layers so that there are chunks of each layer that there's nothing there at all. And it helps you see further back into the visual noise. So I think that's one of the main things I'm looking for in visual noise type media, is how much information can this person communicate as quickly as possible? What's the most you can cram into the smallest amount of space?
Mm-hmm. It's like a form of maximalism
Definitely.
where, yeah, like I'll watch something and I'll see a single like a corner where the sky like is empty. I'm like, oh, I could fucking put a picture of a plane in that corner. You know, just like anything to jam to make visual interest is like I'll do it. I mean, there I will reach a point where like it becomes too noisy, where it's like, okay, where the person can't even tell what they're looking at. You know, we have like I was trying to do this the other day where I have this series where I've been taking pictures of planes. That's another thing I'd like to kind of talk about the process of, because um, it just stemmed from this friend of mine who started posting pictures of planes in the sky from, and you know, like anyone can look up in the sky and see a plane and take a picture of it, especially myself. I live in Chicago, and you know, planes are overhead, like there's three in the air at all times. But something about the way they were framing it, like really you could see their artistic expression within something so mundane, that it just inspired me to start doing it myself, and I started taking pictures of planes. And um but where I was going with this is I eventually had like I had amassed a like folder of like 30 pictures I'd edited, and I wanted to stack them on top of each other because they're all so similar. It's like it would look cool if they're all, you know, in the air at the same time. But it just became such a jumbled mess of just like different colors and like on and all the like resolutions were different, so it was just so much noise. I'm like, okay, this is a scrap project. Like this is too much.
I have a few responses to that.
And I think,
So the
yeah, go
first
ahead.
is that I think that what you're hitting on is what makes for good noisy art. It takes skill to put as much information as you can in there and still have it be separately comprehensible. Eventually, it just becomes all awash and it looks like looks like white noise or something, right?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
static.
and you might want that. Like if you enjoy, Mertzbo has some albums that sound almost just like static. But I think it's more interesting when
Mm-hmm.
you have when you're able to discern all these different things coming together to make the cacophony. And the other thing is that your resolution issue, I think you could solve with AI. There are a few services that you could do depending on how you want to that are good for upscaling things. So like for a lot of my AI generated art, lately, I actually used AI to generate a single video of that later on became the video texture that if you're looking at the video right now, you'll see. But it takes a lot of computation to AI generate high resolution things. So what I do is I later on run it through, I use a platform called Topaz. It's not free, but it's like a one-time fee to get the software, and it runs locally. And you can upscale it to whatever you want. You can upscale videos to be 16K if you want to. So what you could do is, and sometimes I do this if I have images from different places that are different resolutions, is I do the math to figure out what I have to upscale it to get it to be the same resolution as something else, and then they'll mesh perfectly. Their pixels will be the same size.
Hmm.
The only issue with it,
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt, is that if you have something that is
no,
a really low resolution, the pixels get rounded out. Like the pixels become a feature of the higher resolution image.
uh, yeah. I was gonna say I haven't like utilized AI really. Other the most I've utilized AI is the optical flow feature in Premiere. If you know what that is, are
No, what
you
does that one do?
familiar? It's a feature for extrapolating frames. So if you wanna, you know, if your sequence is at 30 frames, and when you're exporting, you can export at 60 frames, and just use optical flow, and it'll just use AI to just assume what the in-betweens would look like. And it helps me sometimes because my animation is so scrappy that like sometimes it'll really blend it in a more it also adds noise because it turns every single in between frame into like sort of an AI jumbled. Like if you pause on the every other frame, it almost looks like uncanny because some of the lines that shouldn't like change, but I like it that way, and I think it adds to this like this level of, yeah, like you said, a cacophony where it's really just it looks like the video is screaming. Like I like that.
Yeah, I do that on Topaz too. I didn't even know you could do that in Premiere. That's really cool. Do you have any other parts of your work that you'd like to talk about more?
Um, yeah, I do a lot of insect photography. I have like a crappy lens setup where I put just an adapter on a 50 millimeter lens that lets you attach it reversed. So you put the front of the lens on the sensor, so the like where you would normally attach it is facing outwards, and it magnifies the image like times 2. So when you have to get like half an inch away from your subject and you only have like a millimeter of focus, but being able to take pictures that small, like I think just I like it's a totally different thing because it's not really it doesn't have a lot of like artistic merit in my eyes. It's for me it's almost more like scientific. I don't know. I like just like it's almost nature documentary. Like a big part of me wants to work for Nat Geo like professionally and do nature documentaries and images. But then the other thing I do with my insect photography is when I have pets, I keep pet mantises and like exotic bugs, and I set up like miniature dioramas as like photo studios, and I'll recreate images or create these own like setups. And my favorite one is tank mantis. I don't know if you've seen that on any of my accounts, but I set up the Tiananmen Square tank man image. I like painted the street he was on and got a little fake tank and put my in a little tiny grocery bag that I filled with an insect carcass and put my mantis where the tank man was standing and recreated that image. And I really want to do more of that because I think that was really fun and a lot of people really liked it.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I've
Um,
seen your Mantis TV video, but I have not seen Take Mantis. Is that on Instagram somewhere?
oh, I think Tank Mantis is a part of the
Oh,
Mantis
I may have
TV.
just
There's
overlooked it.
definitely yeah, it should be in there where it's one of the
Okay.
sequences.
For
Um,
anyone that's listening, Mantis
but yeah,
TV.
I did a photo shoot. Yeah, and then I also did I did a photo shoot and a video edit.
Yeah,
But
and for anyone that's listening, Mantis TV is a lot of little clips of things like he's talking about right now, all compressed together into one short rapid fire video. It's really fun.
yeah, that I have the most fun doing that. Honestly, I mean, like I have a lot of fun doing abstract experimental stuff, but just something about the way those come out makes me really happy. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it definitely. I showed it to my partner, and they loved it too. Do you have any inspiration sources? You've mentioned insects, but what else is there?
Um, what do you mean, like stuff I ingest?
You can take it however you'd like. It could be
Like,
specific artists, it could be
okay.
general vibes or places, music.
I like a lot of abstract painters. Not like anyone in particular. I just like abstract art in general. But I really like David Lynch. He's a big for my sound. He's a big inspiration for my sound design, I think.
What do you mean by that? I like David Lynch
Do you know
also,
David
yeah, but
Lynch?
like, in what way is his sound design influential?
I think a lot of his like experimental stuff it's just so like the sounds are so bizarre and like otherworldly almost, and I like the crackling and like the popping and just almost like dissonance. Like I don't know if you've listened to any of his music, but David Lynch has records he's made with the guy he did the Twin
Mm-hmm.
Peaks score.
I have not listened to his
And
music.
I don't
I've
know,
seen some of his shorter, crazy
but it's
films like you're talking about. And what's that one where they're, I might be mixing it up with someone else. I was mixing together two things. He did one where there were like rabbits that were like sitting in a living room. Yeah.
yeah. I was thinking about
Is that what it's called?
rabbits.
Rabbits?
Rabbits is a good
Yeah.
one. Yeah, I have a sticker of rabbits, like a cartoon of someone redrew the one of the screenshots, and I have that on my computer.
That's cool.
Um, yeah, that short in particular was a huge inspiration for me. As soon as I saw that, I was like, this is fucking cool. Like nothing happens and it's just bizarro and surreal, but I'm feeling so much. And
There's a
I just wanted to,
there's a
like,
conceptually similar film that I've never heard anyone else talk about called Corpus Colossum. Have you heard of that one?
I haven't heard of it. Let me look
I'll
it
get
up.
you a link after the show. But the structure of
Okay.
the film is that they rented out like a generic office space, and the camera kind of slowly moves in circles through one floor of this office space, and things are different every time. And there is like weird
Mm,
music and like sometimes crazy animation that's plastered on top of it, or sometimes it's just really boring and slow and abstract. But you kind of need that to give you a breather. It almost feels like an installation piece. Like you could just leave it running and like sit back and sip on a drink and watch it and think. Kind of like rabbits, where it's just like
mm.
one spot. I don't know. But anyone who likes rabbits, I think, should definitely find Corpus Colossum on the internet somewhere. I don't know that there's a legal place to watch it, but there are a few streaming. It might be on YouTube, honestly, but it's out there somewhere.
There's another one that's kind of like that. I mean, it's not really like that at all, but it just reminds me of like kind of surrealist video art. But I found it because Donkey. Do you know video game Donkey?
Uh,
He's like a
no,
YouTuber. He does a lot of video game content, but occasionally he'll do like film reviews. And he did this film review of this movie. I'm looking through his videos right now. I gotta find it because it's a really cool movie. It's French and it takes place in like this office building that is just identical to every other office building around them, and it's just like
hmm.
it feels like that where you're just in the same place, but everything is. It's called Playtime.
Playtime. I'll have to note that down.
Yeah, Playtime.
Do you know what year it
Um,
was?
I think he doesn't have it mentioned in the video. 1967.
1967. Cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I think a lot, like watching stuff. I've watched so many like abstract, experimental, just bizarro films that all of it kind of bleeds together in my head into this like just idea machine. And I feel like ingesting art is a big part of creating art, where not saying you can't create art without having ever seen it, but like I just think it's a huge part of it for me, especially. So
Yeah,
I don't know if you
it's
relate
like
to
an
that.
ongoing conversation, and you can hold a conversation with yourself. You can monologue, but there's a lot more out there than what's already inside of you. So it's helpful to have someone that you're responding to or responding with.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say creating. Very rarely, other than video art, whenever I'm painting, I'm almost always painting with someone else. Like it's a pretty social activity for me where not that I'm always doing a collab, but I'm always painting next to someone. Like if I'm painting, it's because someone was coming over and it's like, oh, do you want to paint? I'm friends with a lot of artists, and I think like we kind of rub off on each other in a way where like or we'll even just like straight up go, I'm gonna add this to your painting and just like draw a smiley face or something funny. Just being able to like have a fluid that's another like literal conversation where I played a game with some friends where you each start with a canvas and every like 15 minutes you swap it, and I thought that was one of the most fun ways I've ever created art, because like everyone starts a painting the same way usually. Like some people start with tiny details and other people go big. So like when we handed it off, everyone's shit looked so different, and just being able to like mash it all together felt like this really cool like marriage of ideas. And I think collaboration is a really big part of um, what I do. Other than, but on the other hand, my video stuff I make all by myself, and I don't even like when people are in the room with me while I'm doing it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. For me, art is a very spiritual process. And when I say the same way, I mean I don't like other people in the room. Is I often wait until I have complete solitude and I can get as out there as I want to without anyone observing. That's how it is for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. Do you have any questions you'd like to
Yeah.
ask, or any more topics you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to talk to you about AI art because I see you have a lot of it, and I always wonder, like, because I've never done it before, and I've always wondered, like, what is your process? Like, what is your thought when you're, like, how much of it do you let be controlled by the AI, and how much of it, how important do you think that is? Like, do you think if you just put, like, 4 letters into a box that just turned an image into like a picture, did you really do anything? Like, did you? I mean, it makes a difference if you coded it, obviously, but like, like, what are your thoughts on
I
that?
see. Yeah. Um, so the first thing is that conceptual art is a thing, and for people that are listening, I don't mean concept art like people that design Assassin's Creed characters or whatever. I mean people that write instructions that are themselves the piece of art. And that's I'm
Mm-hmm.
not an AI programmer, so I can't say that I am, but that's how I feel about a lot of programming. If you think back to Andy Warhol and his factory, he didn't personally create most of his art, depending on the period of time you're talking about. Like for his
Mm-hmm.
well-known stuff where you have like the same photo over and over again with different colors, he created a process. He may have taken like one photo himself or something, or purchased a photo, but what he did is he set a process in motion that resulted in whatever the end product is. And for I do a lot of different things with AI, but for the AI art where you're typing in text and you're getting an image, how much of it is you is definitely up for debate. I wouldn't say that I created the image. I would say that I had an idea and I experimented with these different tools that led it to turn into an image. And I have done plenty of figurative
Mm-hmm.
art myself, so it's not that I can't in that sense. But I will say that,
Yeah, I wasn't
yeah,
trying to like
I
attack you
didn't
or
take it
anything.
as an attack, but I see
I'm just.
people on, there are a lot of subreddits for different AI art like Deep Dream or Big Sleep or Media Synthesis. And sometimes when they
Mm-hmm.
post on another subreddit, people are like, you didn't make this. How could you say you made anything? And the poster's like, I didn't make it. I had an idea and I used this tool to make something really cool.
Mhm.
Um, but
Yeah,
then going off of
I
that,
see that.
a lot of the AI art on my YouTube channel is from text that I didn't necessarily 100% write myself, because some of them are visualizations of texts that are either historical visionary text, like chapter 1 of Ezekiel or Aleister Crowley's Book of the Law, or there are a few other things in there, or from my own visionary books that are themselves partially written by artificial intelligence. So some of those videos are sequences of text that are artificial intelligence describing its own interior experience performing a ritual. Think consciousness altering performance art. And then outputting what it feels like to do that performance art, the way it alters its own consciousness, and then outputs that as text, which is then input into other software that changes that text into a video. So you see a digital hallucination of a ritual performed and designed by artificial intelligence.
Mm. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because it's not that I didn't understand that. I mean, I wanted to hear what you had to say about it mostly, but I I'd never really heard it. I'd never really thought about it from the space where like the concept is almost higher than the visuals itself, where like they're married in a way where you really, I feel like you need it. Where in a lot of art, like experimental art too, where you'll watch it and you'll be like, what am I even watching? And then someone tells you like, oh, this is actually the results of a monkey, like, I don't know. I was gonna do something super like abstract and surreal, like a monkey's choices on a like color wheel or something, like for like some weird experiment. But I feel like having the two together is like adding another layer and adding like an extra level of understanding to a piece,
Yeah, definitely.
if that makes any sense.
I think it's just that some people think of their art more in terms of the performance, more in terms of the act that you're doing while it's in the process of creation. And you sort of described that yourself, that a lot of times you aren't thinking about the beginning, middle, end, or the end product. You're just thinking about what it feels like to do this thing. And that kind of applies.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the art is, in a certain sense, that experience of the creation, the process. And then what you have left over is what I call an aesthetic residue. It's just like the remains of whatever that artistic event was.
I have a lot of aesthetic residue in my house. I'll tell you that. Like I have an entire like shelf under my one of my cabinets that's just full of paintings that just look like absolute noisy drivel that just came from me just like rubbing my arm against the painting, like just nothing. But at the same time, I'll take a lot of those and it'll become the background of a new painting, or I'll use it as like a plate that I put a difference layer over a video for. Like I think aesthetic residue isn't putting the term residue in it almost gives it this connotation that it's trash, but I think it's much more than that. And I think, yeah, it's much more like it's the it's almost like like a different form of creation, where like what you said about it, where like it's the process rather than the.
Yeah, I use that term.
And but like the
Go ahead.
sorry, I have one more thing. Like the residue is the capture of the process, and while the residue may not itself be necessarily like visually, what you want it to be, just the capture of the process is like, it's it's the shit. I'm just fucking trailing on.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. It's like
Sorry, you can pick me up.
I use the term residue um, because for me, the important part is the process. Um, But yeah, like think of like a crater that's left behind from a bomb. Um, to me, the interesting part is the explosion, but in a clinical white box gallery sort of way, if you took a crater out of the ground and you put it in a little glass box, or I guess a very large glass box, I don't know, that is kind of an interesting art piece, and it allows you to use your imagination to reconstruct this explosion. But for me, the important part was the explosion, not the fact that there's a crater left over.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that kind of relates to what I was saying about like knowing what the process was while you're ingesting the result. Like if that crater is there by itself, you do have your imagination to think, was this a bomb? Was this an explosion? Was this a meteor? Was this a, you know, was it a nuclear factory that went wrong? Like the imagination can run wild. Whereas if you do give the process, it almost like it siphons it in a way that maybe you want and maybe you don't want. Because if you want a think piece like the first one, like is it an explosion, is it a bomb, is it a meteor, then you know leave it without the title. But if you want people to think about the explosion, then maybe title the piece "Explosion," you know, and it's still just a crater.
Yeah, I get what you mean. In that sense, then leaving out the title becomes a part of the process because you're doing this thing, you're leaving this artistic corpse behind, and you're purposely leaving it ambiguous as to what it is. So for me, that lack of titling becomes part of the process. It's like, what is the artwork? It's creating this explosion and then not letting anyone know what it is.
Mm-hmm. I like that too. Um, yeah, I think titles are a really um, interesting way to express something. Like just the way I title is so arbitrary. Like I usually title things just based on what was in my head while I was making it. Like I have a painting that I call birthday painting just because I made it on my birthday. Like, there's really no like rhyme or reason other than just like I wouldn't call something like lines and colors. I'd call it Zamboni, you know. And I think just making people think like in that, right, you're right, where like the title is a part of the piece just as much.
Honestly, the way I title things most of the time is just the date. Like I have so many files that are just
Yeah,
year, month, day, so that I
numbers.
can sort them more easily because I don't necessarily know what it is later. And usually I'll put a word or two afterwards saying like what exactly I was using to make the thing. So if I'm looking at it 6 months later, I can be like, oh, that's what I was doing 6 months ago.
Yeah, that's another thing that is the bane of my existence is titles are half the time they don't make any sense. So I'll be on my computer like trying to find an old project and it's just called Butthole. I'm like, why is it called Butthole? Like this has nothing to do with buttholes. Like, you know, why did I do this? Like it's about ants and I called it Butthole. Like why how did I ever think I was gonna find this again?
Mm.
Just but at the same time, like if you're watching a video about ants and you're thinking about butthole, you're so much more invested, you know.
Yeah, it's some sort of Freudian think about the
I
ants
don't know.
are
Yeah,
anal retentive.
yeah. I think a lot. I like to put like subliminal associations in my titles.
Mm.
Like maybe I'll be the only person who understands it, but just the thought of other people trying to decipher what it means makes me happy enough to make that the title,
I love it.
if that
It
makes
does,
sense.
yeah. We're getting pretty close to the end. Do you have any other topics or questions you'd like to touch on?
Um, I think another part of my art that I goes underlooked that I've only really addressed once. I don't know if you watched Bathroom.
I don't think so.
One of my it's bathroom.mp4. I made it for a festival my friend did for when COVID started. Like as soon as quarantine started, he wanted to encourage people to keep making films because like it was a bummer and no one was doing anything. And I knew we were going to be premiering it over Zoom, so I knew people were going to watch it, and I knew I was going to be able to see their faces while they watched it. And I think that, like, knowing how the audience was going to ingest my product made my process so much more it affected the process is what I'm trying to say. Because while I was making it, I was just thinking the whole time, like, oh, I can't wait to see their faces when this scene happens, or when this scene happens, or when this doesn't happen. Like, I just think knowing your medium and knowing how your audience is gonna, like, if someone's gonna look at something on their phone, I feel like putting something super hyper detailed and something you need to zoom in is like, you don't want to do that. And I have a problem with that because I post like my super high quality bug photos to Instagram where they literally they lose half their quality as soon as I fucking post them because of the shitty
Yeah, I know what you mean.
word.
I struggle with that too sometimes. Some of my videos, I make like a digital stage, and then I do a kind of ecstatic dance called Buto, where I'm wearing like a skin tight green suit, and then I like layer video textures onto like the dark, mid, and highs of my body as I'm dancing like a maniac, and then I drop those videos of myself dancing into different parts of the stage. And you can't really appreciate it on a phone screen, but that's okay. Like I'm doing it because that's what I want to do, you know?
I think that's another thing that kind of goes back to what I said about your audience, where that's you dancing like a maniac in a green screen suit, but your audience just sees this silhouette. They have no clue. Like it's this like this level of disconnect from creator to audience that I think is really fun in putting these Easter eggs for just myself that I think make creating art. Like that's another thing I do when I finish paintings too, is I'll put stuff on the back of the painting. Like I know no one's ever going to look at it. You can't see it in any of my posts, but if anyone ever finds the painting and looks at the back of it, they'll see it. Good for them. Like I like putting stuff like that, like things that no one's going to see unless they really really look hard.
Yeah, that is great. I love that. It also encourages people to actually buy the pieces, assuming you're selling.
Yeah, I haven't sold anything.
Okay.
I should.
Well, don't undersell
I'm
yourself. It's
poor.
better to wait and sell it for what it's actually worth.
Yeah, that's really my thought. I like looking at it. I haven't that's another thing is I create art for myself because I live in an apartment and I like having art on the walls, and I don't like I mean I like other people's art, but I didn't want to buy other people's art. So I was like that's how I originally started making art, was because I moved into a room and all their walls were white and I didn't have any posters, but I had a canvas. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll just do it myself. And I did, and I just went from there.
Yeah, that is super cool. Almost all the art that I have up on the walls is my own or my partner's. Um, yeah, I mean, I've sold a couple small things a long time ago, but mostly it is for me, and a lot of it is very personal, to be honest.
Hmm. Yeah, I would have a hard time giving a lot of them up. Like that, one of them's practically like a birthday present to myself. Like I would never. I don't know.
All right, well, let's wrap up this
But
episode. It has been great having you on here, Sam.
yeah, it was good talking to you, Allie.
Yeah. Do you have any links or anything you want to plug before we wrap up the episode?
Um, Really, I guess my Instagram at Sam Waller Art is where I post most of my art stuff. My bug stuff goes to at Waller's Crawlers. Um, those are really my only two like public accounts. I mean, I have a website, but that's just a portfolio I usually send for work. My YouTube account I occasionally post stuff on, but other than that, yeah, no, really just the two Instagram accounts.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the first episode of Last Unrifled Yaw. I look forward to doing more of these episodes with people like Sam who are just making crazy things. And hopefully you are too.